Our second summer, we redesigned professional development, started bringing in folks nationally, some local folks, and we ended up having 525 people or so show up for that summer institute. Last summer, we had over 800 of our 1,000 teachers show up. So that meant that it was good because by word of mouth, teachers went and started talking to other people, you need to come to this PD. This summer, because of how we work in our negotiations, worked our calendar, every single teacher will get that experience because it's built into our collective bargaining agreement. So now it will be mandatory that everybody attend and get this type of professional development. And what we see is that by building out the curriculum, writing, doing the PD the way that we've done it, having an instructional framework, right? Not just doing it for the sake of doing it, we have seen our district make progress since I've been here. We have closed gaps against the state 2 consecutive years in a row in reading and math. We received exceeding expectations for student growth in super subgroups, African American kids, Hispanic kids, based on in reading and math. So we're very proud of where we're going. Science, we significantly, everybody regrets because it's a much harder test. We didn't fall as far as the state did in both proficient and advanced rates or the Missouri Performance Index. So we're academically solid. Now that I have a framework that we can start building stronger students that will be able to handle the workforce readiness courses that we want to build out, that's where we are now. So I have a team now of about 4 or 5 people. The board approved for me to add 3 additional teaching positions, or FTEs. And so now we're writing our curriculum out for these pathways that we want our students to engage in. We've surveyed our students. We're working with the business sector around some of these internship opportunities, externship opportunities. We're working with Kaufman as a part of this real world learning initiative. And because of the work that we're doing, I was fortunate enough to have been selected to serve as a thought leader at a panel session at the National Superintendents Association conference a month ago, where we were able to talk a little bit about what the district is doing and how we're building our program out. So a couple of outcomes already. We have at East High School about 1,100 students. Every single one of those students are in a pathway. Now you can easily offer pathways because we have the SIG grant, Student Improvement Grant there, but they also have a large enough student population that it allows for us to hire the type of teachers that we need to give these students a robust elective offering. When you have a bunch of small schools, it's a lot harder. When you have schools where the enrollment is 500 or under, you just do not have the ability to offer those types of elective courses, which means then we need to build out manual tech. And we need to make sure that those 12 or 13 career pathways that we have, are they relevant? Do they matter at this point? Are we going to have students graduate into a market that will accept what we're doing right now? So we're looking at all of that. So 2 things that we've added, 3 things. We've added digital marketing, which is great. It's something that a lot of districts have. But we also added what is called a wastewater management program. It's the first program in the United States of its kind. We've got the first 2 students in the country to get their endorsements in wastewater management, working with the water company here in Kansas City. Those 2 young men will graduate and already will have job offers based on this endorsement. First district in the country. The other thing that we started from a real world learning standpoint is called the Cardinal Cafe. We took our digital marketing group of students along with our culinary arts students, and they got together and they collaborated and brainstormed around how do we market, how do we design and market and open up our own cafe. And it's at Manual Tech. It's open on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They make some awesome lattes and mochas and coffee. I had an opportunity to try it on the first time, and I'll be very clear with you. I spent $4.25 or $4.75, took a sip of it. This was before the actual groundbreaking, and I said, hey, this is terrible. And gave it back to the students, said, y'all need to fix this. Nobody's gonna be buying this stuff. And so, yeah, I'm very honest. Nate knows that. I'm very honest. I said, nah, this is not good. So, kicked it back to them. A couple months later, you know, they worked on it, came back, awesome. They make salads. The salads are phenomenal. They bake their own croissants, their own muffins, all of those things. They're running their own little business. And it's open on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Manual Tech. But in our design, we didn't think about the customer experience from a parking standpoint. So the problem is you have to park across the street and then walk across the street to get into the school to get to the restaurant. So we got some things that we have to work on around just making sure that the experience is a great experience, but that's part of the learning process. And we're proud of what we're doing right now in our school district as it pertains to that. We have a framework now. We've created a theory of action for how we're going to develop these pathways. That was interesting. Bird just hit the window. And we have our theory of action. We have our theory of action now kind of mapped out. In fact, we hired Kelly Waiter here. We got her from Lee Summit, and she's probably, I would say, the top marketing communication officer in the state, because you also serve as the president of the whole organization for the state of Missouri, MASPRA. So we got a great person that came in to work in our district. But one of the things we did when we interviewed the finalists for her position, each of them had to take our theory of action and they had to bring it to life. So she had to do a presentation on how would you market this? How would you help us get students and parents engaged and wanting to be a part of this program? And so she ended up doing the best presentation around how we would live this theory of action out, and that's why we ended up hiring her. So we took something that we knew, we're on the front end of it, and we said, okay, who's gonna be able to help us really play this out later on down the line? And we made it a part of the interview process. And it worked well. And so that's kind of where we are right now from a real world learning, a career technology, a pathway standpoint, and we feel good about the direction that we're heading in right now. As far as the overall district, the health of the district, financially, we're pretty healthy. We are inefficient, and I think many of you work in businesses or own your own business. The goal is to be as efficient as we need to be, and right now in this educational ecosystem, we're just not. We have so much choice, and I tell people, I'm a fan of choice. I mean, I did teaching and worked my way all the way up through the system when I was in Houston Independent School District, and we have charters and all of that has been a part of my life. So I actually have no opposition against that, but we're very inefficient here in Kansas City, and that has created a number of small schools. And to me, in my opinion, for some parents, that's great. They want small schools, but that experience for our kids, the experiences that kids get out in Lee Summit and Blue Springs and North Kansas City, it's just not available, because when you have small schools, you can't have theater, right? You can't field, in some of our schools, you can't field a football team. A couple of kids get hurt and we're having to forfeit playoffs because the schools are so small that you can't field a team. And so the experience for our kids gets shortchanged when you have inefficiencies like this. And so what we said was, let's try to eliminate this line in the sand, and let's try to figure out how can we work with the charters. And so we did that. We started an ed collaborative. We hired a person that could help bring us together. And we've done a couple of things. We've partnered now on food services with some of them. Some of them entered into an MOU with us to send their kids to our manual tech to do those pathways. We're looking at shared transportation with some of them, because what we found in our study was that we were spending a whole lot of money on operational things, and that was taken away from what we could offer students in our schools because we're having to spend a lot more money on transportation, food services, custodial services, running the building, so electricity and all of that. So we're starting that work now, working with charters to the best of our ability. And you know, as future business leaders in here, there's also leverage points that both sides have. And I'm not giving up everything, right? I mean, I got to be able to compete against you, and I don't have a problem. You can get mad and say, well, this is not the spirit of collaboration. No, there are things we can collaborate on, and there are things that you're not going to give up, and there's things I'm not going to give up, because we still are in a competitive market. And I think it's okay to say that. And so we're moving it on that continuum to make the system better for kids. But I created this proposition. If you're going to partner with the school district, it should be 50% gain for KCPS, 50% gain for charters, 100% gain for students. And that's just the bottom line. And if it's not, that it doesn't meet those criteria, it's not something that I'm going to bring to our board if it requires a board vote. And that's just the way that I operate. And so we moved on that. Graduation rates, 68% when I started. We're at about 71, almost 72 now. Our system is finally starting to work. This is what I do. I do graduation rates, and I know how to build systems. Our system is starting to work now. We are anticipating anywhere between 75 and 78% this year, because we started tracking our cohorts. Reality is, we should never have been at 68% when I got here. We did not have a system in place. We had kids that were in college on the front page of newspapers, that had graduated from other schools, but were coded as dropouts in our school district. So I've told people our graduation rate, because of the lack of having a system, has always been lower than what it should have been. But now we have a system. And so we think that we're going to see some progress there. I hired an attendance officer that's doing a great job of helping to work with us on attendance. That is an Achilles heel right now for me. And so we need support in that area. But we're moving on that continuum. I'm sorry, folks. I'm struggling.
You need some water?
Please.
I'll go get you some water. You got it, April?
Thanks. And then so we're doing great in that area. And I think at this point, it's more about also giving our kids that fair and equitable experience around dual credit, advanced placement, increase in IB opportunities. And we've done that. We entered into a strong partnership with a company to start Avid. And we saw about 117 more students sit and take an AP exam last year. And starting with our ninth graders, adding AP Human Geography. We had high schools that didn't even offer an AP class. So depending on your zip code, those kids that have the ability to take the rigorous courses, those students never even had an opportunity to do it. So when we talk about inequities that we've created, like this has nothing to do with charters, this is just decisions that we made as leaders, that it's okay for Central High School to not have a single AP class for students. That's unacceptable. Every high school now offers, at minimum, AP Human Geography, AP World History. Next year, that will be moving to AP US History. But most schools now offer, at minimum, 4 AP class offerings to our students. And all of our students can do it. But I think the piece that we run into in this district is, I think people get empathy and sympathy, they get confused on both, right? And the sympathy piece is what has killed urban school districts in this country. Because, oh, poor baby, you don't have a daddy, or poor baby, your mother's going through this. Well, I'm gonna, we're gonna take it easy on you. We're not gonna hold you accountable. And that type of deficit mindset, that type of thinking will never allow for a community that has either been oppressed, marginalized, or shut out of whatever dream, Kansas City dream, American dream. They'll never be able to get off their knees when we have that kind of mindset. We can empathize with them, right? Okay, I understand what you're going through. You don't get to use that as a crutch as to why you can't come here every day and work hard. And that's the mentality that I'm trying to bring to this school district because of my background. I mean, I shouldn't be here, at least if you go by zip codes, I shouldn't be here speaking to you all. I'm the only one out of 8 in my whole family to make it past the 9th grade. But I'm here because there were positive adults that came into my life and they helped me on my journey. And most of these people were not related to me. And that's what I talk about. This community can do so much more. Instead of approaching situations through a deficit lens, how can I be a part of the solution? How can I give some time? And let me go find a kid that might be interested in wanting to be an entrepreneur one day or an executive one day. And let me just maybe go find me a kid at Southeast High School that I can mentor. Like when I leave here, I'm going to do my mentoring program. I'm about to meet with a bunch of young men, and we're going to Grand Street Cafe to teach them etiquette on how to eat. You know, nobody ever taught me what fork you're supposed to use and all of that kind of stuff. I get on a cruise ship, I'm just savage, you know? Nobody ever taught me that stuff. Nobody ever taught me that I'm supposed to ask the father permission before I propose to his daughter. Nobody ever taught me that. I just proposed to her, gave her the ring, never called her dad. And that didn't end well. So, I mean, ultimately, you know, for a lot of our kids, they don't have that type of support. And it's not that parents are just absent. Some of these parents have to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. They just can't be present. We had a young lady that went to Dillard, and we helped her. We found some money for her, got some volunteers to help us. She's a freshman this year, and we got her a plane ticket to fly from here to Dillard University in New Orleans. We didn't know. She gets to the airport in Houston, her connecting flight, she missed it. And she missed her connecting flight because she had never flown a plane before. And she was sitting there and she was waiting to hear if somebody was going to tell her, you need to get to this gate. She didn't know to get off the plane and go look on the screen and look at the connecting gate. She had no idea. So she missed her flight and had to sleep in the airport overnight. And then we worked to get her on her flight the next morning, which backed her up with registration and everything. But it's those little soft things that they don't know. My kids, my daughter's 17, my son is 16, and I have an 8-year-old. My 16 and 17-year-old, they have all flown on their own. They have flown on their own. They know how to do this. But my resources allow for them to have those kind of experiences. Our kids need those kind of experiences and opportunities, and this is a reason why we said from an equity standpoint, we're not going to be in a situation where because you are poor, you don't have the ability to go and take a trip to Memphis, right? Because the only people who can go are the ones who can afford to pay the fee to go, or you want to go to Japan, but you don't have enough money, right? We do those kind of trips. So we've made it very intentional that we're going to put money up for students so that their economic status doesn't become a barrier as to why they can't get those rich experiences that kids like mine can get. Because my wife and I, we can pay for our kids to do club basketball, club volleyball. We can fly them all around the country, and it's not a burden. But for parents like mine who were poor or weren't in my life, those kind of things just simply were not possible. And so you're always behind the 8 ball. So how do we work together to get this experience accelerated for students much earlier? And so it's a lot of those kind of things that I find myself having to grapple with as people approach what's happening in our school district, and then people not understanding that our school district has been making some significant progress even before I came. It's been making significant progress for these students, but it won't go as far as it needs to go if we don't have full-blown mobilization of this community, saying that what's happened in the past is no longer acceptable. Easter truce shouldn't be written off, shouldn't be written out of the Kansas City dream, because it is right now. It is right now. And that's unacceptable. Lack of economic development over on that side of town, trees that are dead, grass growing up in between the cracks, I live in Hyde Park. Trees dead in front of my yard. I kept cutting the yard. I'm like, damn, every time I come out here, it's twigs. I just don't know whether, I didn't know whether it was dead or not. I knew something wasn't right because I'm having to constantly move twigs. I come one day, there's orange spray paint on it. I go up to my door, there's a sticker. The city has determined that this tree is dead. We're gonna come on this date and we will cut it down. Now, I've seen a bunch of dead trees going up and down 32nd, 33rd as I'm headed to Central. They still there. So, you know, the inequities continue to persist, but because I live in Hyde Park, that's not something that, and I told the mayor about this, both mayors. Like that's, you know, if we're gonna be mayor, we gotta be mayor of all, not just certain communities because those people have the biggest voice. And so these are the things that I'm grappling with with the power that I have, right? And I have a lot of it. I realize that I have a lot of power and influence. I can get in the ears of who's who in this city. And if I sit here and say it's okay that I've made it, and I ought to be happy that I'm making this salary and that I get to have this access to people, then I have failed everybody. Because we also know that there are a lot of people that are intentionally shut out, and how do I leverage my power and influence to make Kansas City a great city as a whole, not just for some. And so I'm thankful that I had an opportunity to talk to you all, and this is where you ask me questions. If you don't want to hear the truth, don't ask it, because you're going to get the truth.
Thank you, Dr. Goodall. I was always a fan of Inside the Actor's Studio, and so this is your classroom. So, right, this is something James Lipton would always say. So, you raise your hand, we'll come around with the microphone and answer. You guys can, Dr. Goodall, give you a straight answer. So we have another school leader over here.
Awesome.
Hi. Well, first, I just want to say thanks for coming and making time and to speak with us. It's been great. So my name is Brian. I'm the head of school or private school on the Kansas side. And at the beginning of your talk, you talked about resource allocation and teacher training and that sort of thing. And I'm constantly staring at spreadsheets and trying to determine what resources to allocate to what programs, just like you do probably. And one of the things that's interesting about education is, and you mentioned the dynamic workplace, and you're constantly assessing programs. One of the things that's tough, I think, is as you do those assessments, is like, I don't know if teacher retraining is the right thing, but making sure that you have people that know what to do when you create a new program. And with what it sounds like you're doing, you've got there's a lot of dynamic things happening. And so so my first question is, how are you making sure that you have people trained in order to make those programs a reality, especially on a regular basis, and especially if you're having to change them, over and over, because that's a real challenge to make sure that you have the right people in the right place.
It is. I was just talking to the dean of your program a few minutes ago, and I said probably the most difficult thing that I deal with as CEO of this school district is training people. And when you start doing good work, everybody comes and start picking them off. That's actually what's happening right now. A number of people that we have lost, we're losing to promotions to other school districts or other entities. I have always taken this approach that I'm not interested in having a whole bunch of vendors tell us how to do our jobs. So what I try to do, and when I started in the district, that was something that was pretty prevalent. We just had a whole bunch of different programs in the district that wasn't aligned to a strategic plan. And everybody's just tripping, people just falling over people's feet, so you're not getting anything done. And ultimately then, when these initiatives fail, ultimately it's the district's fault, and when they succeed, then it's the people who came up with the idea it's because we came up with the idea, we made the investment. So what I said was, we have to build our internal capacity from a human capital standpoint. We're going to take our people, so I'll give you the example of this CTE redesign. Our people on that team have been to multiple school districts around the country. I even took a trip with my deputy superintendent and that team, and we visited Fort Bend ISD outside of Houston, and we visited Aldine ISD, and we looked at what they had done with their redesign of their programs and brought ideals back. What I told my director is, we're giving you all of these resources, we're giving you all of this support, we're building the capacity in you to be able to see this through as you work with your team. And so what we try to do is train our own people internally, give them the skill set so that they become trainers of everybody else in the system, rather than just bringing a bunch of outside people from outside the state to come in and lead the PD. So we do a lot of capacity building internally. The hard part is, as I said, how do I how do I keep them long term when they're doing such good work and they're moving on to become principals or moving on to be executive directors in other systems. I've been here 3.5 years. We've already produced 2 people that's left the system that are now superintendents. I had another one. He's been a finalist for 3 openings recently. And so people are calling and they're asking, you know, around that human capital piece. I don't know if I answered that, but.
No, yeah, it's,
Okay.
it's a struggle, for sure.
No, it is a struggle.
Hi, I'm Tammy Greenberg. I'm the CEO of Ronald McDonald House Charities. Thank you so much for coming. I echo Brian's thanks. Really terrific. Thanks for your candor, your truth-telling, your inspiration. Here's my question. You're 3.5 years in, and you have these really great successes that you're pointing to now. 3.5 years ago, I get that we're not going to talk about what happened before. I'm guessing you encountered a lot of eye-rolling, people who thought you were going to be a short-timer. You inherited a position that had been a revolving door. So 3.5 years ago, what are some things that you did to get people to align with your vision, to trust you, to kind of come along? Again, now you've got successes to point to, but when you were at the beginning, how did you get people to believe you and come along with this plan?
The first thing I did was I enrolled all 3 of my kids into the system. And somebody had said that was the first time in 16 years that a superintendent had enrolled their own kids in the system. So that was number 1. And because I did that, it saved me right from the beginning. Because when I started, we had that school bus debacle, the first day of school, where buses didn't pick up a bunch of kids. And then I'm, at the end of the day, at Lincoln College Prep, because I had to pick up my high schoolers, and I'm media all around me, and this is what they said, you know, what are you doing about this, right? And remember, I just started, so I'm like, well, I'm trying to fix it, right? But one of the things that saved me, I think, is when I said to the media, as a professional, I'm very disappointed, I'm very embarrassed at this rollout. But as a parent, my kids didn't get picked up. That's when everybody knew it was bad, when the superintendent kids didn't get picked up. But I think that shared with everybody in the community that, man, he's superintendent, but he's a regular parent here. He getting the same thing we getting. So ultimately, it allowed for me to instantly get quick wins in the city. And when we built our strategic plan, I'll be very clear, I came in here with, I already know what we're going to do in this strategic plan. Now, so we brought in a ton of people from the community to help us build that strategic plan. They're working in groups, and I'm going from table to table, you know, trying to lobby, like, I don't think we need that. What do you think about this? And they're like, nah, this is what, nope, this is what we want as a community. So the strategic plan, I got some things, but there were things in there that I didn't get, because the strategic plan was a community-driven plan, where the community said, if we do these things, we think we'll have a better system. So I had to listen to that. And what happened in that strategic plan is now, I mean, we're realizing it. We got so many positive things that I can point to just around growth in our system, just because we have adhered to that strategic plan. It's only a 39-page document, 101-page addendum, right? So if you really want to learn the process of how to build out a strategic plan, just go look at our addendum. It walks you through everything that we did to get to that 39-page product. And it's a polished document. And other superintendents around the country, they're looking at my strategic plan, our strategic plan. When I was in San Diego 3 weeks ago, New superintendent said, hey, you Dr. Bedell? I said, yeah, man, nice to meet you. Hey, he said, I really want to pick your head. I'm looking at your strategic plan, and I want to do something like that for my new system. And I said, well, you better involve the community, and you better be ready to lose, because there's going to be some things you're going to want that you're not getting. So I, try to educate these younger people coming up. But that really helped out the community process. And I will tell you the other thing that helped out was, honestly, telling people that, I had other options to come here. I don't have to have this job. We talk about this all the time. It's not about being arrogant. What I mean by that is I'm not compromising my values and beliefs. I'm not going to sell these kids out for politicians. I'm not going to sell these kids out for adults. I'm going to be a martyr for these kids. When I interviewed her, I said, if you're not willing to be a martyr for these kids, you can't work for me. Period. And because at the end of the day, we can always get jobs. I can get a job, even if I have to go back and teach. I'm going to have a job. And teaching is far more than I ever thought I would do in life anyhow, based on how I started, based on what I was told. So, and that's probably was the happiest that I've been in my job, in my journey, was when I was a teacher. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I try to teach now. I coach little girls in basketball. We went 7-0 this season at the Linwood Y. 7-0. And we played them up, third graders, and we played up against fourth and fifth graders. So I still love, to do that stuff. But those were some of the things that I would say has really allowed for people to feel that this guy really cares. He's authentic. I'm not afraid to go into the worst neighborhoods. I do unannounced school visits. I don't have cops or security with me. I go by myself. I will go out I will go in the hood and I will play ball out on the court and give business. And that has also given me a lot of street credibility because I play basketball, out in the community. But I also know that I have the knowledge and the body of work to do this job at a high level. And I expect that and demand that out of people who work with me, or, you just won't be around. It's just that simple.
We're back here.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for being
Good morning.
here. Clearly very passionate about what you do, so thank you. I woke up and I remembered we were on our Teams Zoom meeting last night, and I asked everybody's going to the speaker series, right? Because it's going to be a good one. I can relate very closely. I grew up in the city of Chicago public school system, and
tough.
it was rough. My closest peers know this, but my father, he spent my entire life in prison. My mother to this day is still a street crackhead. I visit her still at the back alleys of Elston and Albany. That was our life. So I was fortunate through a very great and solid mentor to be pulled out and then through the military. And that's sort of how I survived. And I went back and I brought my family back through, paid for their schooling and so forth. So one of the things that I learned along the way, a specific skill set that's really very important, I think, that majority of school systems in the country are not intentional about teaching, and that's, you touched on it, soft skills, right? You can get all A's and still flunk life.
That's correct.
And so, I find, I'm sure I speak on behalf of the class here when I can tell you we spent a lot of time talking about emotional intelligence. And so we did a little activity where identify your challenges that you're facing in the business, and majority of those challenges they weren't technical, they were EQ challenges, if you will. And so I guess my question to you is, what are you doing to be intentional about teaching resilience and mental toughness in the school system? And so to caveat that, sir, are you familiar with the Education Summit coming up on the 4th, the Global Alliance Education Summit happening at World War I Museum? So they have five breakout sessions there. Community relations, curriculum transformation, discipline redesign, and then human resources. But the last breakout session, this is just a caveat, is where 75% of the registrants have signed up for, and it's social emotional well-being. And so I find that incredibly interesting, and so I'm really interested in what you all are doing on that front, right? How do we get the kids to sort of forget, right? How do you draw that line and leave what's at home so that you can focus on development. And you reiterate that, yeah, we're teaching you getting A's, but we still don't want you to flunk life.
Yeah, I think in that area, we're doing a lot of work. We have our student support team that's working hard to work with some of our schools, and some of it is, around trauma-sensitive schools, but also some of our schools we're working on Center for Conflict Resolution and teaching kids how to be able to cope when they're going through difficult times, how to react. And so conflict resolution, all of those kind of programs are programs that we've started over the last 3 years. We recently received a grant for almost $2.6 million, VOCA grant, that also allows for us to provide further professional development, helping our people to approach our students through that resiliency lens. So our team is building that out right now as we speak. But to be very clear with you, I have personally gone to the majority of our schools and done a presentation speaking to students about the soft skill piece, the life development aspect of it, and sharing with students how going through some of the stuff I went through, and now I'm an example for all of you, that you too can overcome that, and here's how you need to deal with some of the coping mechanisms and those kind of things. You would be amazed at how many students, after I finish speaking, will line up just wanting to have one-on-one conversation about, that's something I'm dealing with right now. It's good to know that you went through this. What else did you do to navigate through that? I was talking to some of the kids at Central High School, is another example. We got a young man that just transferred here from Texas. A heck of a basketball player, will probably go play Division I in a smaller school, but he's been bouncing from home to home to home. So I'm getting my therapy yesterday, because I do therapy once a month, just to make sure that I'm in order mentally. And the therapist was telling me that he had spoken to this kid, and as I'm sharing with the therapist some of the stuff I had gone through, he's like, man, this is the stuff that these kids need to hear. And I want to get a little small session with several kids over at Central that's right now living through being homeless or mother or dad on drugs or absent. And so I've been very intentional I went through all of our secondary schools already. This year I probably did about 7 or 8 elementary schools where I'm working with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. But we also are going to continue through our student support division, our student support services, to really maximize that grant to help us in that area, to work with our kids around that, just the life development. Our strategic plan under goal number 5 is preparing students for college, career, and life. So that life aspect is that piece that you're talking about. How do we prepare them to be able to graduate and be able to deal with a real world that in many cases may be cruel to them, but that they can still navigate through that. And there's ways that you have to go about doing that, and there's ways that you have to show up in order to meet with success to get to where you want to get to. And that's just the way the system operates.
Dr. Bedell, we're right here, and then I'll get over to that
Okay.
slide next.
Thank you for coming, Dr. Bedell. I have been a huge fan ever since you came here. I'm Starla Brennan. I'm the ED at Amethyst Place, and we provide housing for mothers in recovery. Over 60% have lost custody of their children, and so while they're with us, then we reunite them. And I'm glad you brought up parents, because I think that we put so much on schools and expect them to raise these brilliant children and get them to graduation. And those kids can go home and have so much of this derailed because of their home life, because of homelessness and drug addiction and alcohol addiction. And I'm just wondering, and I say we don't want to put more on the schools, and yet you are the connector in the community. And can you speak to how you reach parents? I know it's so hard to involve them because they are handling multiple jobs, and to do something at school is just over and above what they can physically do. but it's also so important, critical, really, to the success of a lot of these kids. And do you have you added that to your plate of how can we engage the parents more and even help the parents along that skill development path? Because, like you say, I mean, they grew up in this area and they're suffering from the environmental factors that you've mentioned.
Yeah, I would have to collect data on that. I don't have quantifiable data right now, but we did launch our Parental Empowerment Institute this year, and it's housed over at Central High School, and it is basically a resource room for our parents. We've actually created a full wing of supports at Central High School because that is the community where we have our highest eviction rates, we have our highest rates of crime, we have extreme poverty that exists over in that feeder pattern. So at Central High School, we've started Justice in Schools. We got an award for that, first district in the country to do that, where we have legal aid will come in and provide free legal support to our families that are being wrongfully evicted, because that impacts mobility. So now that has helped us to create some level of stability and protection for our families. We have started the Parental Empowerment Institute, and we have hired personnel that specifically focuses on parental involvement. 2 people that are under Kelly's team, and they're doing a phenomenal job of doing the community outreach, working with parents. Our district advisory committee for parents has grown since I've been here. We also have a student district advisory committee where we're teaching students how to advocate for things that they want. And those ladies lead all of that, and so they get our rooms packed when we're going out and we're working on educating our community around things that's going on in the district, talking to our parents around how they can help. But I also talked with a group yesterday where I'm looking at wanting to figure out a better onboarding experience, not just for our students, but for parents. I think we've done a great job of doing onboarding for educators who come in. We got a fine onboarding system. But when parents register, we still do some things that are antiquated. So for instance, we know that Tyler is our enterprise system that we utilize for grades, attendance, and even a way that we can communicate to parents. We don't leverage it to the extent that we need to. We'll bring parents in, they'll register, we'll give them a piece of paper that tells them how to go and log on and how to access it. What we need to be doing is, before you can leave our building, there are going to be stations that you have to go to, and by the time you walk out on your cell phone, every single app that you need is already there for you to be able to click on it, and you can go right into seeing how your kids are doing. We have a Safe app now for school buses. So getting that downloaded, so for those people whose kids are on a school bus route, when it's freezing outside, don't put them out there at the time they're supposed to go out there. If the buses are running 20 minutes behind, keep them in the house, and then as the bus approaches, you see it on your phone. So it's those little things that we have to do as a district, I think, to become more just polished and organized in those areas to improve the experience for our parents, but to also let them know we want you to be active participants in the lives of your kids. And there's a lot of research in my dissertation. There's research that specifically speaks to why parents are disengaged. In many cases, it's because they had a terrible experience with the system themselves, and they see it as that same old system. And so we have to do some re-education of our parents as a whole. And so those are the conversations that we're having, and I met with my IT team about that yesterday.
So unfortunately, I love the conversation. This will end up probably having to be our last question because we have class at 9. Matt?
Yeah. So again, thank you, just to mirror my colleagues, for being here. This has been a really inspiring conversation. To shift gears a little bit, I kind of want to talk a little bit about one of the challenges that I've seen, and that's in technology and kind of data fluency. One of the challenges I think that is particularly impactful on marginalized communities is that the technology industry is already changing so quickly that things that we were taught 10 years ago are kind of obsolete. So that, coupled with the challenges that you've already talked about for marginalized communities, what are some of the conversations that you're having with your board or with your teachers about how to address that kind of rapidly changing technology climate and how students are learning kind of the most up-to-date information in data, in information science, and that sort of thing?
Well, right now, we made a $3.2 million investment to basically build out our IT infrastructure in the school district. I learned after hiring my director that we were operating under 15-year-old systems, 2002, 2003 servers and things of that nature that we were still operating under. We've gone in and we've changed all of that. You know, we've changed out access points. We've put, you know, we worked on an initiative with Sprint to do hotspots for all of our families with our high school students that can't afford to have internet access at home. So if you're in our school system, you will be able to have internet access that's renewed every single month at no cost so that you can utilize your laptops at home to do your homework. But as far as our teachers are concerned, we've done a lot around our digital learning division, which is also a part of our IT department, where we have a badge system that teachers have to go through. And you can go to our website, it's there, all of these different modules that will keep our teachers up to date on the advancements in technology. How do you utilize technology, given the fact that we are a one-to-one school district, to help support, but not, it can't overtake the teacher, right? So, so we have all of that put in place now where teachers are going in, they're earning their badges and their credentials, and at the end of completing that, we give them a stipend. If you've gone through and you've passed the assessments and you've shown mastery in those areas, there's a $300 stipend or something at the end for you completing this whole badge system. So we have been very intentional in wanting to try to keep our teachers as modern as possible, but then our team will go in and they will go and work directly with teachers that need support in those areas. So we feel like what we're building out now from an IT infrastructure standpoint will keep us modern and also help us pivot a lot faster with the market as it continues to change on us.
Just help me thank Dr. Bedell for his time.
Just have to say to Gus back here, we go back. I told him, man, I feel like I just met him yesterday and it's already been almost 4 years. But I remember Gus telling me when we came to do some recruiting here, he was like, you know, this is the first time I think we've seen KCPS, and you had been here how long?
At that point, about 16 years.
That we had even come here to try to recruit in our own backyard for people to work in our system, so.
You now have a lot of our principals, too.
Yeah, we do. So I do want to thank you, and Julie, of course, good to see you. So thanks, appreciate it.
Well, some of you have class, some of you don't. We will let Dr. Bedell get on with the rest of his day and his mentoring. I also don't know which fork to use still, so I'll grab him after. So thank you again, and thank you everybody for being here today.